There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow.
The first thing I wanted to talk about, obviously, this fight, by the way, it's rescheduled for October 12th. Artur Beterbiev, who you are the assistant trainer for, and Dmitry Bivol. That fight is less than 3 months away.
Yes, sir.
So, a couple questions for you. When do you guys start camp? Have you spoken to Artur at all, or do you not do that until camp starts?
I keep in touch with him a little bit. I try not to, I give him his space, but he's actually over in Siberia right now. What he does is, before camps, he goes off on his own. He's like a real life Rocky. Like, he goes off on his own. He does his own stuff. And he went to Siberia. I guess they're famous for their mountains. And he's riding bikes, his mountain bike up the mountains. So that's how he's rehabbing his leg, I guess. And that's just him, So that's what he's doing. Yeah.
So his conditioning camp is in the mountains of Siberia. That's his pre-camp.
Right. That's him. That's just him being him. He's always doing stuff like that. And, that's just who he is.
When do you guys, it's July 23rd, so there's 2.5 months. Typically, when can you expect camp to start? Because I'm assuming he'll be training in Canada when he comes over as usual.
Wait a minute. Yeah. I'll be going up there in the middle of August to get ready.
That fight, it's the fight I was looking forward to most on the whole schedule. Like Fury Usyk, that was the fight, and then with it being postponed, the good news is it's only 2.5 months away. So,
right.
How are you feeling about that? Is it too early to get excited?
Yeah, I don't really get excited till, even when I get to camp, I take my time, we settle in, but I think once the sparring gets heated, and you see his improvement, and you see him start to get hungry, because it's almost like, it's a funny thing, like every camp kind of unfolds a certain way, and he builds and he builds and he builds, and you can see, like, sometimes guys will come to camp in the beginning and they'll be doing all right, and I'll be like, listen, just know that he's going to get better. Like, literally week by week by week, he's going to be like a different person. And, by the end of the camp, he's generally just on fire. And it's, it's a really cool process to actually watch it unfold in real time.
Yeah. I'm not hearing this from a lot of people, but some people here and there, when they talk about the fight now, a lot of people are saying, man, Artur's getting old. He just had knee surgery. His body's breaking down. And I've heard some people start to really drum up Bivol's chances in this fight. I know how you feel, but I want to ask you, the knee, his body, his aging, does it concern you at all for this fight coming up?
Not particularly. You got to understand that it's not necessarily aging. This guy, it's an indication of how hard he trains and what he puts into this. Like I don't think it's his body's not being affected because of the aging. It's because of what he puts it through on a regular basis. Like, this is a guy who, as I'm sure I told you before, but I'll, for anyone who hasn't heard this, like, when he beat Joe Smith on a Saturday, Joe Smith on Saturday. They went home to Canada on Sunday. He took Monday off, and Tuesday morning at 6:00, he was in the gym pounding a tire on the wall with a sledgehammer. And I have the video. I have video of this. So that means he had to get up at 6 a.m. to get there by 7 so we could do this video, right? Nobody in the world, there's no one, not Tank Davis, not, Shakur, none of them. They're not getting up 2 days after their fight and going to train at 6 a.m. Now, they can tell you they do, but they don't. None of them. Artur's different. He's different.
I was going to say, that's the word, different.
He's different. And I asked him in the last camp, I brought it up to him, and I was like, why do you do that? Why were you doing that? And he looked at me, and he's just like, putting it in, in my words. Basically, he said, that's just me. Like, that's just what I do. Like, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I get up at 6 a.m, 2 days after the fight, to go train in the gym by myself? So that's just him. So if and it's amazing his body hasn't received more damage, considering he's been doing this for well over 20 years, with this mentality. But believe me, he's physically a beast. He's ready. He gets himself ready. We don't have to worry about anything. Like we tell him, like with most fighters, you'd have to say to them, you'd have to remind them, like, hey, make sure you eat good over the weekend. Make sure you get your running in. Make sure you do some sit-ups. Artur would be insulted if you told him to remember to do this. Like that's just him. That's just what he does.
I know I've asked you this before, but how good of a feeling is that for you? You're his assistant trainer. Just for any trainer to have a fighter that you don't have to motivate, because I'm sure you've had your fair share of fighters who you've had to, hey, get up, do your road work. What are you doing? You're late to the gym. How great of a feeling is it to have a guy that you have to slow down? Like, you don't have to motivate him. You probably have to slow him down.
The only other fighter I really worked with who was like that, I have to say, was Jose Antonio Rivera. Rivera, former welterweight, junior middleweight champion. I had him. We won the junior middleweight title on Showtime, WBA. He was like that, but Artur's like that and more. Like, he's like that all the time. Like it's just who he is. And it's great. It's like it's a huge thing, because you don't have to babysit him. You don't have to worry. Like there's never, like, every trainer knows. You ask your fighter on Monday, hey, did you run over the weekend? Did you run this morning? It's a question,
Right.
It might be yes, it might be no. But with Artur, you don't even ask. Like he's so, in tune with himself and with what he wants. You never have to worry. Like with his weight, you never have to ask him how much he weighs. You never have to ask him, is he taking care of business? You never have to ask. He's on it 100%.
So I want to move on to your big gathering, but this is a question or a statement that a lot of people have, and I talked to you about this too, but the Kegi says, this is not for John Scully, but I find it highly dubious that a man in his late 30s who fights very high performance level can do that naturally. It's the, what's prevalent in boxing, a lot of people say, are performance enhancing drugs. And, people have questions about him being older, Artur. So how do you respond to this?
It's a compliment. It's a compliment, because like before the last fight, I forget who it was. One of the other two, I guess it was Teddy Alice was training Callum, and he was saying, he kind of said something similar, and I said, without realizing it, like, you're giving Artur a huge compliment, because you're saying this guy's so special, he must be doing something illegal, right? And listen, Artur, let me tell you, Artur is a devout Muslim, right? That, like, he's not a guy who just says he's Muslim and wears the hat, right? This is a guy, he's 100%. He wouldn't do this. He wouldn't performing enhancing drugs and stuff like that. That's not him. I've seen him train. I know the mentality of him. He like I said, it's a compliment to him that you think he's on drugs. You know what I mean? Because how else could he make it to be that awesome? But his mentality is unlike anything I've ever seen with a fighter. The only one I can compare it to, and I wasn't with him, but I've heard the stories, especially when we were fighting him, but Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah.
His mentality reminds me of how I see Artur. And you see, Bernard was able to take it to the almost 50 years old. So, Artur prides himself on being who he is, and that these are the results that you get. And these are the results that anybody could get if they, most fighters, they eat junk food, they party, they smoke, they do this, they do that, right? I know this for a fact. I know it for a fact, right? Artur doesn't do any of that.
Yeah.
You never have to worry about that. So he's an
People-
indication of what you could accomplish.
Flying Falcon had a question for you. He asked, I know the answer to this, but did Beterbiev ever spar Dmitry Bivol in the amateurs or face him in the amateurs?
They didn't. I asked Artur about it because it's a funny thing. Dmitry talks about them sparring and like it was really tough work, and he was very respectful of Artur. And I asked Artur about it, and he said no. At first, he said they didn't spar, and I said, "Oh, he said you did." He goes, "Well, we did, but he was younger, and I kind of took it easy, like he didn't really consider it sparring, like because
Right.
he was considered himself like a little more advanced, so he wasn't bragging or anything, but in his mind, it wasn't really like a big deal." So it depends on your perspective, where you are in your career at the time you box someone.
Subscribe to my YouTube page and you can win a once-in-a-lifetime, no expenses paid trip to check out the boxing memorabilia in my garage and in my home office. You can come hit the heavy bag and go through the hundreds of boxing magazines I have, and even take a picture with a life-size Oscar De La Hoya cardboard cutout that I took when I was at HBO. Subscribe now for your chance to win all of this.